The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Marble walls echoed faint whispers and tapping shoes. And in the heart of the room stood a man who once towered over the city skyline in pride and power. Jonathan Hale, the billionaire real estate mogul. Once untouchable, was now merely a defendant, hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his cufflinks, a gesture more out of habit than confidence. The press flooded the gallery. Flashbulbs sparked like wildfire just outside the wooden doors. What was once a scandal whispered behind closed boardrooms was now front-page fodder: embezzlement, fraud, tax evasion, and the fall of an empire, built on charm, money, and concrete. Asterisk, but Hale wasn't alone. By his side, or rather a step in front of him, was the star-studded criminal defense lawyer Martin Kelso, known across the nation for getting the guilty out clean. People didn't hire Kelso for justice. They hired him for results. Hale had paid dearly for those results, to the tune of $7 million in legal fees. There wasn't a soul in the courtroom who thought Hale would serve a day behind bars. Not with Kelso at the helm, asterisk, except that morning, something no one anticipated happened. Asterisk as the judge entered and the bailiff called order. Kelso turned toward his client, adjusted his tie, and leaned in with words that shattered the air between them. Asterisk, you're on your own, John. Asterisk, the courtroom gasped as Kelso straightened and walked toward the exit without so much as a backward glance. The judge's gavel banged sharply. Hale stood frozen, betrayed in front of the entire nation. The cameras flashed like they'd caught a murder. And sitting quietly behind the defense table, in the second row meant for aides and clerks, was Natalie Reed, 228, junior legal assistant. Practically invisible until now. Asterisk, Natalie had no pedigree, no Ivy League degree, no courtroom experience. She'd been working under Kelso for the last 6 months, mostly fetching coffee, typing up notes, and staying silent. But what she lacked in status, she made up for in heart. She believed in people, especially Hale. Asterisk, she'd watched him cry. In closed rooms, when his name was dragged through the mud, she'd seen him pay his janitors during the pandemic out of his own pocket, double their salaries even as his profits crumbled. She'd read every file, every transaction, and every email the prosecution used to frame him. She knew something didn't add up. Asterisk, and so, as Hale stood speechless before the judge and the prosecution smirked at their unguarded prey, Natalie did something no one expected. She stood up. The courtroom turned. Asterisk, Your Honor, she said. Her voice clear, but shaking. I'll defend him. Asterisk, there was silence. 1,000 eyes blinked at once. The judge peered over his glasses. Asterisk, Miss, who are you? Asterisk, Natalie Reed, junior legal assistant to Mr. Kelso. And if this court will permit, I'm willing to act as defense counsel. Asterisk laughter erupted in the gallery, muffled at first, then louder. The prosecuting attorney, a smug, middle-aged shark named Victor Granger, chuckled audibly. Asterisk, is this a prank, Your Honor? This is outrageous. It's asterisk, but Judge Danforth, an old man with deep eyes and a deeper sense of fairness, held up a hand. Asterisk, Miss Reed, do you even have a law degree? Asterisk, Natalie nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Passed the bar last year, but haven't been licensed to practice yet. I filed my motion with the Bar Association for provisional representation under emergency circumstances. Asterisk, that part was true. Barely, she'd submitted the request that morning after Kelso started acting suspicious. It was a long shot, a miracle if accepted. But when the court clerk whispered something into the judge's ear, he raised a curious eyebrow. Asterisk, well, it appears you anticipated something we didn't. The board approved your motion 30 minutes ago. This is highly irregular, but given the situation and the defendant's clear lack of counsel, permission granted. Asterisk gasps echoed again. Victor Granger looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Hale's eyes, once dulled with shame and disbelief, blinked at Natalie with something new, hope. Asterisk, the courtroom erupted into whispers as Natalie stepped forward, adjusting her borrowed blazer, clutching a thick folder of notes she'd compiled. In secret over weeks of suspicion, she placed it on the defense table, glanced at Hale, and whispered, "Trust me. Believe you." Natalie's first move was risky, to delay opening arguments by requesting a forensic audit of the prosecution's evidence. Granger objected furiously, but Natalie argued that certain key documents used against Hale hadn't been validated through a neutral party. The judge, perhaps impressed with her audacity or annoyed by Granger's arrogance, granted a 72-hour delay. Behind closed doors, chaos reigned. Kelso was unreachable. Rumors swirled that he'd taken a quiet payout from one of Hale's corporate rivals. The betrayal wasn't just legal, it was personal. Hale's company, Hale Consortium, had been targeted ever since Hale refused to sell to a massive foreign investor group. The same group now sat silently funding Granger's case through obscure donations and backdoor deals. Natalie stayed up for 48 hours straight, pouring through records, text messages, security footage, and employee testimonies. She found anomalies. In timestamps, emails sent after employees had logged out, signatures forged, trail after trail pointing towards someone inside Hale's finance department, someone framing him to take the fall, by the second day of court. Natalie walked in stronger, straighter, sharper. She called her first witness, a quiet intern named Lucas Myers, who used to fetch coffee in the accounting department. No one had spoken to him before. Natalie had under oath, Lucas admitted. He'd been instructed to log into Jonathan Hale's account by a man named Robert Vale. Hale's former CFO. Robert had vanished shortly before the indictment. But Lucas had kept screenshots, time-stamped and damning. He was scared, but Natalie made him feel safe. She presented the evidence to the court. Even Judge Danforth leaned forward in his seat. Granger fumbled his papers, and then came Natalie's boldest move yet. She played a voicemail recording secretly saved by Hale's executive assistant before she was fired. It was a call between Robert Vale and Martin Kelso. In it, Vale clearly offered Kelso a bribe to throw the case. Kelso's voice replied, "If the check clears, the billionaire burns." The courtroom went silent. Hale buried his face in his hands. Granger demanded the evidence be struck from the record, but Judge Danforth allowed it, citing public interest and authentication. The press exploded. News anchors broke their scripts to report what had just happened. And Natalie, the young, unknown legal assistant, became the face of justice. But it wasn't over. Granger still had more. He brought forward fake witnesses, shady records, and spun his web of doubt. Yet Natalie stood her ground. With each day, she dismantled lies with calm precision, her voice growing stronger. The public opinion shifted. Hashtags began to trend. #Natalie read, #Justice for Hale, #Lawyer with heart * at the end of the chapter. As the gavel sounded for adjournment, Natalie stood under the courthouse steps, exhausted, drained, but undefeated. Hale came beside her, offered his hand, and for the first time since his arrest, smiled. "You saved me," he said. She shook her head. "Not yet. But I will." To see how Natalie faces the final trial, survives threats, takes on an entire legal machine in the biggest courtroom showdown of the year, don't miss Chapter 2. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful, gripping true-style stories that leave your heart racing and your soul stirred. You won't believe what happens next. Tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. The sun pierced through gray clouds over the courthouse as the trial entered its final and most pivotal stretch. The story of Natalie Reed, the once ignored assistant turned last-minute defense attorney, had become national news. Overnight, social media had dubbed her the Lioness in Heels. Legal pundits called it the biggest court twist in years, not just because she was young or inexperienced, but because she was winning. But while the world watched with hope, Natalie carried the unbearable weight of knowing she was the last line between an innocent man and a prison sentence that could bury him for decades. Jonathan Hale, who once strutted through boardrooms, now sat quietly behind the defense table, hands folded, eyes locked on Natalie like a soldier waiting on his only surviving comrade. The betrayal of his lawyer, Martin Kelso, had not only destroyed his trust, but shattered the credibility of his entire legal defense. Now all eyes were on the assistant nobody saw coming until she stood up. Asterisk inside the courtroom, Victor Granger was a man on fire. His closing weeks of arguments were not about justice anymore. They were about saving face. The Kelso recording had wounded his case deeply, but Granger was still dangerous. He brought forward new witnesses, waved spreadsheets of digital trails, claimed Hale signed off on every transaction, and tried to bury Natalie in legal jargon. He mocked her experience, laughed when she objected. But beneath her quiet demeanor, Natalie was burning with clarity. She no longer feared him. She had truth, and it was her sword. Asterisk, her first major move that week was brilliant. She subpoenaed Angela Cortez, a forensic accountant hired during the original investigation who had quietly resigned before testifying. On the stand under oath, Angela admitted she was pressured by senior investigators to just make it match. She was told to manipulate findings so they'd show Hale's involvement. Even though the original data showed someone else, Robert Vale, the CFO,